Few episodes of Tales from the Crypt manage to capture the uneasy marriage between guilt and genius as powerfully as A Slight Case of Murder. Beneath its pulpy aesthetic and sardonic framing lies a meditation on how the creative mind can become its own executioner. This story, presented with the show's characteristic mixture of irony and dread, unfolds less like a ghost tale and more like a confession in disguise. It examines how storytelling, that noble act of shaping reality into art, can also be a tool for repression, a place where the unspeakable hides behind clever prose and witty dialogue. From its first scene, the episode plays with contrasts: laughter and fear, truth and invention, creation and destruction. The camera pans across a cluttered study filled with trophies of literary success, framed reviews, faded photographs, shelves of novels with garish titles like Murder in the Mirror and Death Wore Silk. Each one is a reminder of former glory, but the trophies have gathered dust, and the man who wrote them, Harold, is now a relic himself. The lighting tells us what words need not. He is a man consumed by his own fiction. The television hums softly in the background, broadcasting an old crime film he once wrote, and as he watches, he mouths along with the dialogue. There is something tragic in the way he repeats his own lines, as if trying to re-inhabit a life that slipped away. The irony, of course, is that Harold's art imitates life too closely, and his life, in turn, begins to imitate the art he once sold to an eager public. The knock at the door that follows is like the sound of fate arriving punctually. It's a young fan at first, or so Harold believes, a journalism student who claims to be writing a thesis on crime fiction. Her name is Lily, bright and inquisitive, and her admiration disarms him. She praises his early novels, the ones critics dismissed as too dark, too moralistic. The chemistry between them is uneasy, part mentorship, part manipulation. Lily insists on knowing how he captures the psychology of killers so precisely. Harold smirks, replies that it's all imagination, but the camera lingers on his eyes, and something in them betrays the lie. The heart of A Slight Case of Murder is this tension between confession and disguise. The more Harold talks, the clearer it becomes that he's not inventing, but remembering. His stories were never fantasies. They were reconstructions, crafted from experiences he cannot admit even to himself. Lily becomes both muse and mirror, reflecting back the guilt he thought he had buried. The dialogue between them is layered with double meanings. When she says, "You make your characters seem so real," he laughs, then whispers, "Maybe they were." This line, almost lost in the hum of the soundtrack, is the hinge on which the entire story turns. What Tales from the Crypt understands so well in this episode is that horror is not about monsters, but about the inability to tell fiction from memory. As night falls, the tone shifts. The student's curiosity turns invasive. She asks about the woman mentioned in his early dedications, the one whose name never appeared again in later books. Her questions are too precise to be coincidence. Harold grows agitated. His drink spills, his voice cracks, and the room feels smaller. The sound of the clock ticking grows louder, as if marking time before a confession. When Lily excuses herself to make a call, Harold's paranoia ignites. He listens at the door, hears whispers that sound like accusation. In one of the episode's most beautifully shot moments, he looks into a mirror and sees for a brief second not his own face but hers, bruised, bloodied, terrified. The reflection fades, leaving only his expression of disbelief. Was it a hallucination, a supernatural warning, or his conscience visualized? The show leaves that unanswered. That uncertainty is its strength. What follows is a spiral of delusion. Harold believes Lily has uncovered his secret. He insists she's manipulating him, blackmailing him, plotting revenge. His panic drives him to commit what he believes will be the perfect murder. He lures her into the basement, offering to show her old manuscripts, then locks the door behind them. The scene is almost theatrical in its cruelty. He speaks to her as if narrating one of his novels, describing her terror in the third person while she pleads for her life. "She looked at him," he intones, as if she finally understood how stories end. He raises his weapon, a blunt candlestick, poetic and archaic, and strikes. The camera doesn't show the impact, only his trembling hands afterward, covered in what looks like ink but is unmistakably blood. The murder is filmed like a grotesque parody of inspiration. The typewriter upstairs begins to click on its own, each keystroke echoing like a metronome of guilt. Harold staggers upstairs, dazed, and finds the typewriter typing the title, "A Slight Case of Murder." The sight freezes him. He tears out the page, but another begins to emerge. The machine has become a conscience he cannot silence. He smashes it, and the silence that follows feels heavier than any scream. This is where the episode transcends the limits of pulp storytelling. It shifts from crime drama into psychological horror. The body disappears. The next morning, Harold wakes to find the basement spotless. No trace of violence, no blood, no sign of Lily. He begins to question his sanity. Was it all a dream? A story written in his sleep? He searches for her name online, finds nothing. Then he receives a letter, no sender, no return address, containing only a single page from one of his old drafts, annotated in her handwriting. You forgot the ending. The ambiguity is exquisite. We never learn whether Lily existed or if she was a manifestation of his guilt, an avatar of the woman he killed years before. The horror lies in the uncertainty. Each version is equally damning. Either he is killed again, or his mind has recreated the scene as punishment. By the time the detective arrives later that day, Harold is already unraveling. He admits to hearing voices, seeing faces in mirrors. The detective, bemused but curious, leafs through Harold's manuscript and remarks, "You've written about this exact thing, haven't you?" Harold denies it, but the evidence is on the page. The story describes everything that just happened, line by line, word for word. It's an impossible loop, life imitating art, imitating life. The ending delivers the kind of poetic justice that defines Tales from the Crypt. Harold, overwhelmed by fear and doubt, collapses in his study. As paramedics carry him out, the camera pans back to reveal the typewriter once again moving on its own. The final page rolls out with a chilling conclusion. The author was pronounced dead at the scene. Cause of death: imagination. What makes this episode remarkable is how it uses the structure of a crime story to critique the creative ego. Harold's downfall is not murder, but authorship. He believes that by controlling the narrative, he can control reality. But reality, in its cruel simplicity, resists manipulation. The story becomes a metaphor for every artist who confuses creation with control. The line, "Cause of death, imagination," may sound like a joke, but it's one of the show's most profound insights. It suggests that the creative mind, once unmoored from empathy, turns destructive. Harold didn't just kill a woman, he killed the boundary between fiction and fact, between pen and conscience. What's particularly striking about A Slight Case of Murder is its atmosphere of decay. The set design evokes not just the death of a person, but the death of an era. The fading glamour of pulp literature, the loneliness of aging fame, the emptiness of artistic legacy. The old posters and dusty trophies are not mere props, but ghosts of admiration. They remind us that even success can rot when cut off from truth. Watching Harold wander among them is like watching a king among ruins, still clinging to a crown that no longer fits. The direction is deliberate in its pacing, allowing silence to reveal what words cannot. The episode resists the temptation of jump scares or graphic violence. Instead, it cultivates dread through repetition, echoed dialogue, recurring sounds, mirrored imagery. Each recurrence blurs time a little more, until the viewer, like Harold, no longer knows what is real. Even the music seems complicit in this disorientation, swelling at moments of self-recognition rather than fear. The climax is less about punishment than inevitability. Harold's mind, so adept at fabricating reality, turns inward and consumes itself. The typewriter's final message serves as both eulogy and indictment. The Crypt Keeper's closing quip, though typically playful, feels oddly elegiac here, as though acknowledging that beneath the show's dark humor lies a real tragedy. The tragedy of those who mistake creation for confession, who believe that imagination can erase what conscience cannot bear. On a personal note, the episode resonates because it captures something deeply human: our need to reshape our own pasts. Harold's fatal error is one of scale. He does what all of us do in miniature. We retell our memories to make them bearable, edit our regrets to make them survivable. He simply does it too well, too completely. His art becomes a weapon of denial, and when denial collapses, he is left defenseless. There's a moment in the middle of the episode when he stares at his reflection and says almost pleadingly, "Writers don't confess. They invent." That line lingers long after the screen fades to black. It is both his justification and his epitaph. What Tales from the Crypt achieves in A Slight Case of Murder is a rare combination of genre entertainment and existential commentary. It's a story about a man haunted not by ghosts, but by his own imagination, a man who thought fiction could protect him from truth. Instead, it becomes the instrument of his undoing. The beauty of it lies in its circularity. The more he writes to escape guilt, the more he inscribes it into being. The final irony, of course, is that Harold achieves immortality. His story, the one that killed him, becomes his masterpiece. The audience, like the readers of his fictional crimes, becomes complicit in perpetuating his sin. We read, we watch, we enjoy, and in doing so, we participate in the same cycle of fascination and denial. That is the true genius of this episode. It turns the mirror not only on its character, but on us. In the end, A Slight Case of Murder is not about killing, but about storytelling itself. It is about how the act of creation, when twisted by guilt and ego, can destroy the creator. It reminds us that imagination, for all its beauty, is also a weapon, sharp, seductive, and mercilessly honest. Watching Harold's fall, one feels not horror, but recognition, a quiet shiver of empathy for anyone who has ever tried to rewrite the past and found that the story was writing them instead.